The topic, anti-racism. A lot going on in the country, a lot going on in society, and as you know, a lot going on in education as well. So before we jump into the topic, just share a little bit about yourself and your experiences.
Yeah. So I am I'm an 8th grade math teacher. This will be my 17th year here in a couple weeks, starting up. I've taught in 2 schools in Atlanta, Georgia. I taught at high school for 14 years. This will be my 3rd year teaching middle school.
Middle school, cool.
So I've taught all levels of math from 8th grade up. What is kind of also normal about my story is that I'm white, as are most teachers in America.
That's right. 80%?
Right? Yes, you've heard that.
Yeah.
But I have mostly, and some years almost exclusively, taught Black and brown students, primarily African-American, this being in Atlanta, but I've had years where I've had a huge Spanish-speaking population, some Hispanic students, more some years than others, but mostly Black students, very, very few white people have I taught in my 17 years.
Wow.
Sometimes 0 in a class, and then the most I've ever had in a class was 3. So,
wow.
And that has led me on kind of a crash course, and I say crash course because it's been a disaster at times, kind of a journey of, I was 30 years old the first time I taught in a classroom, and I was one of those guys, one of those white guys, who would loudly have said, like, race doesn't have anything to do with teaching math to teenagers. And I liked teenagers, I love teenagers, and they seemed to like me, and I liked math, and math did me well, and I just thought I was gonna stand up and talk about math, and like everything was gonna be good. But I quickly found out that a white guy teaching a room of almost all Black children, trying to pretend that race doesn't exist is not a recipe for relational excellence, right?
Relational excellence, I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, I like that.
So, and anyway, I've been on a journey since then of trying to figure out, like, what does it mean to be a successful white teacher of Black children? I think, maybe an excellent white teacher of Black children. I think you can be successful without dealing with it, but I think it's a subpar kind of excellence. And if you really want to, and I know you have a lot to say about this, so I'll pass it to you, but what I say to white teachers is, or any teacher, white teachers, if you really want to be an excellent teacher, you need to care about the whole child, not just their math brain, but their whole body. And that includes everything that's going on with their hormones, to whatever extent you're privy to it. It includes what's going on in their home life, to whatever extent that you're involved in that, and it has to do with their racial and cultural identity, to whatever extent you're involved in that, and you are involved in that. As a white teacher of Black children, you're involved in it no matter what, because of what's going on in the country.
I think it's interesting that you highlight that we have to teach to the whole student, right? And that you're involved in that because you're there during developmental milestones in that student's life, whether it be the things that are going on at home, whether it be racial identity development, all those things matter. Yeah, it matters. So I appreciate you recognizing that.
Well, I was lucky enough to, I started teaching in 2006, and there was a senator nobody had ever heard of named Barack Obama, or at least I'd never heard of him. And he ran for president, as you know, and became president. And I was also one of those white people that thought we'd fixed it. This had fixed all the racial problems in America, and we did it. And I very quickly learned that wasn't true, as I'm sure you could say you always knew that wouldn't be true. But like a lot of white people, I thought it was gonna fix everything. Anyway, so there was no keeping, I was teaching teenagers, and we had our first Black president, and it wasn't easy for him to be the first Black president. He was still, the slings and arrows of racism, and those made their way into popular culture, and it made their way into my students' dialogue with each other. And I could either choose to pretend it wasn't happening, and hide, or I could engage with it in whatever way was appropriate for me to do so, and I chose to engage. So.
What they call learning opportunities.
Yeah, that is what they say.
That's what they say. All right, so I'm here today in the role of a counselor to hopefully provide something to other counselors that will help them carry that baton for contributing to the overall development of all students, especially students from historically marginalized backgrounds?
You know, first off, it's worth saying I never COVID has. Y'all do amazing work. That's all I'm saying. As counselors, school counselors, like y'all's job is so heavy and so complex, and has only gotten, I feel, more so in the last 10 years. And I routinely a child will ask to go see a counselor, and you know, protocol for us is we always let them go. You know, bend over mid, can you give me 5 minutes, whatever. But, you know, usually call down the counselor real quick and say, hey, so-and-so's on the way. And every time I do, I'm just like, and bless you for the work you do. Like, I cannot say enough for y'all.
Well, thank you for that. We need more advocacy for counselors in our schools.
No, it's an easy. I said easy, but it's a cuttable position. People like try. I worked several years when I was in high school. We needed 4, and we got by with 3. You know, and it was just such a burden on y'all and the students and everything.
I would probably imagine you all probably needed more than 4.
Okay, correct. We had 1 per grade level. We probably needed 2 for freshmen and 2 for seniors.
Exactly.
So 6 total. But the year after, we got by with 3 somehow. I don't know how we did that. 3. So.
Yeah, it speaks to the work of counselors all over the country, and it speaks to, you know, all educators, even educators, teachers, as well as administrators, as well as counselors. You have to have a calling to be in this profession, to work with our kids, to help to educate them. So now that we've gotten to know a little bit about your background in education, and you're recognizing that more was needed, let's talk about antiracism.
Let's talk about antiracism.
Yeah. So again, the purpose of this presentation is to help inform school counselors, right? And I think one way we can inform them is by letting them know some of the struggles, challenges that you may face as an educator who happens to be white and who serves primarily students from racially diverse backgrounds. Yeah. So share with us some of the challenges that you've come across in broaching this issue.
Well, some of the first challenge that jumped to mind kind of almost immediately was just the kind of default assumption from students sometimes, and that I might not care, and students and parents. And I've told this story before, and it really bothers some white people, but I think it's really appropriate. Is I'd been teaching, that was like 10 years maybe. It was my 9th or 10th year, and I was sitting in class at an open house, and and no one was in my room at the moment. It was like a walk-through open house, and a mother rounded the corner, and she had like a 6 or 7-year-old with her, not my student's age. I was teaching high school, so it was like a little sister, or little cousin, and she rounded the corner, and she saw me, and I saw her face kind of like steal a little bit, right?
Really? Okay.
And she said, and she walked up, and she said, "Are you Mr. Wamsted?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "This is your first year here." Like it was less of a question, just a statement. Like, you're white, you're in this mostly black school. This must be your first year. You must be paying off a loan. You must be teaching for America. You must be something going on where there's a reason you're here, and it doesn't have anything to do with you like wanting to be here. Right? And I'd heard, I'd gotten that before a little bit from kids. I'd never had a parent say it to me quite like that. But I just smiled. I was like, no, actually, it's my 10th year here. I'd been in the same room for 4 years or 6 years or something at that point. And she just immediately changed, just instantly. It was just like, oh, really? You probably know my older daughter or something. And I was like, I did teach your older daughter. I taught her an elective like 3 years earlier.
Okay.
Like, that I would have no reason to ever have talked to the parent. It was just a goofy elective. And I was like, oh yeah, she was great. And all of a sudden we're like talking about our older daughter that I taught. And I tell that story to say that I understand her feeling right in that corner, right? Like she was a black mother. She had a black daughter. She had 2 black daughters, maybe 3. The other girl might have been a daughter too. And she had black children, and she rounds the corner and sees this white guy who's about to teach math to her child. And we all know how important math is as a gatekeeper that it serves. As a counselor, you know, like when you get that senior close to the finish line, and they're missing that one credit, it's math, right?
Yes, sir.
And so she sees me, and if her first thought is, this guy's white, this guy's not invested here. And was she wrong? Sure, but was she
justified?
Yes. Was she justified? Absolutely. Because in my 10 years at that school, I'd seen a dozen to 24 white teachers all there for less than 2 years, or never more than 2, never more than 3. I'm sorry, between 3 1 and 3 years. Yeah, that was the term of a white teacher at that school. So, she was completely justified. And so anyway, I get that from students sometimes, and from parents sometimes, and I think that is hard. It's nothing compared to being a black man in America. So I'm not trying to
No, not at all.
I'm not trying to play equivalence here.
No, but I think you raise a really good point in that a challenge is working through the healthy paranoia that many parents from racially diverse backgrounds may have when they walk into the school building. So that's challenge number 1. Any other challenges?
Well, this is a new one for me. So my personality, as you said, you lean towards the paranoia. So I'm a white man, right? So I got that going against me in many regards. But I'm also somebody who chose to and enjoys teaching middle schoolers. So I got a lot of energy, and I got a lot of just words. I got a lot of words, and so I have been on an arc in my life of where, as I said, I started not thinking race mattered. Right. And that would have been I would have signed the document that said, race affected America, but
things are better now.
But things are better now, and things are getting better. I would have signed that things are getting better. That's the document I would have signed. And they're going to get better without us working.
Without us working?
Right. That's how I would have said it.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Ignorantly, truly the word ignorant. It was an ignorant sentence.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I went from there to just this deep dive into, I wanted to read every book, I wanted to listen to every podcast, I wanted to know everything, I wanted to talk to as many people as possible, and then I wanted to go annoy the spit out of everybody in my life and tell them everything I'd learned, right? And that was good in a lot of respects, and it cost me some relationships in other respects, or at least it troubled some relationships. And this is all before Trump, so throw Trump in there.
Yeah, I follow you. Yeah, we haven't gotten to that yet.
We haven't gotten to Trump.
Or post-Trump.
This is all 2014, 2013. And so where I'm struggling now, and this is, I kind of would want to bounce this back to you, is I'm struggling with the and now we're in a little bit of a space where we both need white people who will say the things and have the conversations, but also we're a little tired of white people taking up the air in the room. We're tired of them writing the books that become the bestsellers, right? I mean, that huge backlash right after George Floyd, when all the white people's books started selling, and was, and and some of them were good books and some weren't, but like the number 1 book on everyone's list was White Fragility, right?
Fragility.
So we need that to be the number 1 book. And the number 2 book was Kendi, and the number 4 book was Kendi. I mean, so that was all good, but so bouncing this back to you, I struggle sometimes, especially now, between the combination of when to speak up, how much to speak up, but also not presenting myself as the know-all, be-it-all expert, and trying to defer. And sometimes you got to defer through silence.
Sometimes you have to defer through silence. As a black educator, I know that all too well. Yeah. Because when I speak up,
it's forced on you, right?
It's either forced on me and I have to respond, or it is forced upon me and I have to speak up through silence. Because if I were to speak up with that booming voice, with
You're
that passion, then I'm immediately a threat. Yes, immediately a threat. So, so listening to that particular challenge, knowing where to go, when to speak up, how loud to speak up when you do speak up, when to be quiet, knowing when to be quiet. Jay, I'm not here to dictate to any educated white, black, Asian American, Hispanic when they should speak up. There's this notion of cultural humility where individuals, a tenet of cultural humility is to be a lifelong learner and to engage in action based on the things that you learn.
Yeah.
Who am I to dictate when someone should engage in action and when they should not? Okay. So in my humble professional, personal opinion, I think you should speak up when your heart tells you to. Okay. This is heart work that we're doing, right? And it is also some work that we're doing to, it's going to take hard work in order to break down these systems that are at the foundation of the country and that have some, you're talking about, 20-foot thick reinforced wall barriers to them. They do not want to be torn down. No. Yeah. And so with that being said, yes, should there be some balance? I think the issue is not that people immediately flock to those who look like them to get the word on those issues, because I think the larger issue there is that in America, they've never quite listened to black folks or to those who are historically marginalized. When George Floyd happened, everybody marched, oh, that's atrocious. And my circle of friends, we looked at each other and we looked at each other like, what the hell are people so upset for now?
Yeah.
It's like, bro, that almost happened to you 25 years ago.
There was a TikTok challenge that went around this year where there were several terrible TikTok challenges. The bathroom one was the worst. Did you catch on to that in your...
I'm glad I did.
Okay, it was terrible. It involved destroying toilet stalls.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
But one of them involved black students. They would loudly say, they would turn TikTok on, and then they would loudly say, loud enough for the teacher to hear, at a moment when it was inappropriate, would say, "But does he say Black Lives Matter?" And just to see what the teacher would do, right? So it would be a black student and a white teacher.
Interesting.
And I'm not on TikTok. I'm only affected by TikTok by the fact that my students.
Oh, your students are on it.
Yeah. But when that happens in my room, I have to react properly, right? And there's a million different ways to react, but by keeping the power in mind and the legacy of isms in mind, I'm more able to react appropriately. And I reacted. Just in case you're curious, the end of the story, I reacted by looking up and shouting across the room, "Of course Black Lives Matter! Do your math!" And the girl raised a fist across the room and did her math.
What's up?
But I can imagine many teachers ignored it, tried to pretend it didn't happen, or I'm sure there are teachers that shushed silent students for that.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to imagine, had I done that in the 90s?
Oh.
When I was in school.
They didn't have TikTok back then.
No, there was no TikTok. But even, anyway, there's a cultural dynamic with regards to generational differences is what I'm alluding to that. But even the experience of being open enough to understand that A, social media is an embedded aspect of all our lives, especially our kids' lives, students' lives, and that B, responding to something that unfortunately has become a lightning rod in our country, such as uttering the phrase Black Lives Matter, and how there are unfortunately some educators who probably would not respond in an affirming way. So you've highlighted 3 challenges. I alluded to something that I did that was an actual success. Talk to me about successes you've had as a white male teacher in predominantly minority schools that have actually benefited students. What type of successes have you had or experienced?
So first off, I think I've taught math to them, and I say this kind of in defense of some of the haters that are just like, oh, when these woke teachers, all they care about is race and gender and sexuality, they don't care about the subject. I do care about the subject. I like math a lot, and I like teaching it, and I like when my students learn, and I like looking at their test scores. I wish we tested a little less, but I like to, I like to feel like I taught math.
For those who might be watching this interview, might I add that you have a PhD in mathematics?
That's true. It's a PhD in mathematics education. So,
that's still pretty serious, guy.
Not to the math people. The math people.
Oh, not to the math people.
It's very. They poo-poo me. But I just really...
So I got a note this year from a girl. I don't know where they were. They were somewhere, and somebody was having them write notes to teachers. It was one of those things you do at the end of the year when you're like kind of killing time, I guess. And I got a couple of notes from kids, and it was like, "Oh, thank you so much for X. Thank you so much for telling stories about Y. Thank you so much for you've been a great math teacher. I love math. I hated math at the beginning. I like it now. Stuff like that, and stuff like that, right? Yeah. And those are stories like overjoy me to hear a child that did not like math that likes it now. But I just had one girl. It was one of my favorite students. And she just wrote, "You're my favorite white teacher," and I just laughed, and that's great. I mean, like, I am thrilled to be her favorite white teacher.
Unpack that.
Well, knowing what I know of my school, which is mostly taught by white teachers. Yeah. Not 8th grade. It's interesting. It changes as you grow up. So 6th grade is mostly white. 7th grade is mostly white, but 8th grade is mostly black.
Okay. It's
really interesting.
Yeah, that's a neat dynamic.
I have hypothesized that as this is my theory. This may get cut from the video, but I hypothesize that as the black children get older, white people don't know what to do with that when they hit puberty. So a 6th grade black boy is different than an 8th grade black boy. I mean, a 6th grade boy is different than an 8th grade boy. That's what I mean. But like, if you're a white teacher, if you're a white person and you are subconsciously reading black adolescence as aggression, right? You don't want to teach 8th grade. You want to teach 6th grade, or you want to go find another job, right? So that's my hypothesis about why that happens. There's no, our principals are all black, and they do a great job of hiring them. I don't think they're deliberately doing anything. I think it's subtle. They're hiring educators. Yeah. Anyway, I know she'd had a lot of white teachers, and I know that she'd had some black teachers, and she was black, and she happened to be in the class where the Black Lives Matter story happened. Okay. It made me happy to think that that's how she saw me at the end of the year. Was like, you know what? That's a good white teacher. Like, I can only imagine what it would be like as a black child to go through school and be taught by mostly white people. And I know that's the reality. I know that's the norm in America. It is. And I don't know the stat offhand. I know it's a large number of children will not have a black teacher K-12, right?
That's true.
Certainly not K-8. And then they get to high school, maybe they're 1 or 2. But so anyway, it thrilled me. Several years back, I had a student. It was just a similar kind of moment, except she was like walking out the door. She's the last one to walk out the door, and she, for like no reason, this wasn't like write a note to a teacher. So it's just it was like on a random Tuesday. She just turned around and said, "Ms. Wamsted, you're the first white person I ever trusted." And she just turned around and walked away. And I'd looped with her, so I taught her algebra and geometry, or maybe it was geometry and algebra too. I can't remember. I'm getting old. But I taught her 2 years in a row, and she hated me for 6 months. Because she, just because teenagers.
Healthy paranoia?
Yeah,
teenager?
Healthy paranoia, teenager. Yeah. I mean, some combination of healthy paranoia and teenagerdom. Yeah. And I knew at that point we were cool, but it was both complimentary, but also kind of made me sad. I was like, it's sad that she never had a white person that she trusted before, right? I mean, think that at 16 or 17, she would say that.
So my mind is flying right now. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell by the way I'm looking, but I'm thinking about the experiences that you just shared from those two students. You're my favorite white teacher. And what was the second one?
You're the first white teacher I ever trusted. White person
that I ever trusted. And I'm thinking about the challenges that you explained and how you've navigated those challenges, and how you've navigated those challenges have to play a role in those students feeling that way and making those statements to you.
Yeah, well, it loops back to the healthy paranoia. It's not crazy that she doesn't trust me walking in the door, right?
Right.
To think about the student, that she wouldn't necessarily trust me.
Right.
Just like the mother.
Right.
And it's not crazy that the student this year with the You're My Favorite White Teacher that would like...
I had a student, I just read this note. This was from my first year of teaching, and it was pasted in a journal that I happened to be looking at. So I was 17 years old, and this boy wrote something to the effect of, I can't quote it verbatim, but he wrote something to the effect of, I just assumed all white teachers would know what they're doing, but be kind of boring. And you just weren't boring, and I really appreciated that. And it's kind of funny, but it's like a stereotype, right? I mean, he came in with his own version. Like maybe he trusted me fine. He trusted me fine in other math, but he just thought it'd be really boring. And he was healthily surprised when I wasn't.
This is so interesting to me, man. So what I'm hearing is those students felt that way, probably because you affirmed them, probably because you maintained some sense of equality and equity in your classroom, and because you're uniquely you with your own quirks and so forth that go into a student making the statement like the last one just made there.
Yeah.
And what that boils down to is what counselors are trained to recognize, and that is that Black, Hispanic, Asian kids go through the same developmental milestones that all other kids do.
Yeah.
That they want some of the same things that white kids want: to be affirmed, to be cared for, to be loved, to be recognized, to have their experiences validated.
The white teachers gotta give them that dignity, right? Yeah, we're all just humans here, right?
Yes.
And we do the same. We do similar dumb stuff to each other, and similar funny stuff, and similar interesting stuff. Like there's just a part of being a human, an American.
Yes.
A child that like thinks and breathes and watches the same TikTok videos, like that we all like go through things together, and yet it diminishes them if I stop there and just say, well, you're just like my sons. You're just like my sons, because we're all humans, and we're all lives matter, and we're all people.
Yes.
And so my sons are just like you. They're a little bit younger. They're gonna be just like you when they're old. They won't be Black boys.
That's right.
Right? They're gonna be white boys.
That's right.
That's gonna give them a different, and they're gonna, God forbid, grow up to be white men, right? And
yes.
like to take all the air out of the room. Not if I can fix it. But I think that holding that tension in hand is so important for us. And as a counselor, this is you're in these like crisis moments, right? For me, it's like bench press in the classroom, right? But for y'all, you get them when something happened at home and it came into the building, and they just got to get out of the room, or they got into an argument with someone, a best friend, and they just got to get out of the room, or a teacher did this and they just got to get out of the room. And you get these crisis moments where you both have to give them the dignity that you are like me. Whether we're different race, different gender, we're still human. We still like have the same cultural milestones. We still have the same president. We still live in the same state of Georgia. Like,
that's right.
You're like my nephew. You're like my sister. You're like my aunt. You're like my mom. Like, and yet you're not just like me, right?
Right.
Like you come with your own both lived experience and actual experience.
Right.
And to hold that intention is just really the trick. So there we go. We fixed it.
Well, I think we fixed it. The hard part is getting people to understand the necessity of challenging how we've been socialized to take normal behavior of adolescents and teenagers that occurs within Black, brown students and pathologize it. While white students, it's just normal boys being boys. And if we don't actively push back against that, if we don't work to be anti-racist, then those sentiments will creep in when we don't even realize it. It is why there's a disparity in discipline in schools today.
Absolutely,
Because of those implicit biases that we're not actively pushing back against.
All right, so listen, some of the successes that you've highlighted are to primarily talking about your experiences, and that is to acknowledge what is, and to do the work with intentionality. And we know that you've done the work with intentionality because you have qualitative feedback directly from students. Alluding to such.
And I gotta assume, the law of, math would say that if one or two students a year explicitly say something like that to me, like other students feel that.
Yes.
And I think it's important, again, to the angry teachers, like, this is combined with me also teaching math, right?
Also teaching
my
math.
job. I'm not just there to like be woke and like have a black teenager tell me they like me. I'm there to teach math, but also I think, and the research would support this, is that a math teacher can be more effective if they're, again, back to that phrase, teaching the whole child.
Teaching the entire child, which recognizes that race is a part of the child.
Yes, yes.
And the child didn't make it that way.
No.
The threads of our country made it that way. Yeah. Which reminds me that counselors, educators in general, we must learn the history of the country to find out where all this stuff comes from and why we're even here today talking about this subject. Something that really gives me hope is this right here.
Yeah.
You're in my home, and we're sitting and we're having a conversation.
And having a blast. I mean, I am.
I could sit and talk for the next 4 hours, but I know you got to go home.
Want to make sure it wasn't just me.
I'm having a good time. I'm just picking your brain on this stuff, right? And what it alludes to is what I think educators are going to have to do in pushing themselves out of their comfort zones, which means that you're going to have to leave the confines of your homes to get to know people and to have difficult conversations. I don't want to get into politics, but I would imagine that I'm probably a little bit more conservative than you are.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to share this, and you might even edit it out. But my friends call me the Black Dick Cheney.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I am not that much of a conservative, but that's the running inside joke.
That's your joke.
Yeah,
okay.
that's the joke.
Black Dick Cheney. Okay.
Just to say that there are differences between you and I.
Yeah, sure.
But the beauty of it is, regardless of the differences, we can collaborate and come together to talk about an issue that we know will have a lasting impact on students that I know you care about, and I know well that I care about. I had to filter.
Yeah. That's good. That's fine.
That was pretty good. Okay. That we care about.
Yeah.
And so I operate on the onus that if you care about kids, if you care about students, then you're going to do the work, both inside of the classroom, inside of the school building, as well as outside of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to make you a better educator.
It's going to make you a better person.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah. Which is going to make you a better educator. And that's not a value judgment on your part or my part. It's just, we know that when people come together and break bread, quote unquote, which we will do, we would have done it sooner if it had been for COVID, of course, that barriers start to fall. So Jay, listen, it's been fun. Yeah. I think we've highlighted, and I appreciate you sharing your perspectives, allowing us to hear about some of your experiences, and hopefully dropping some nuggets of wisdom that will benefit those who are at our presentation. I'm sorry you can't be here with us
Me too.
in Austin. Nevertheless, we're doing what we can to make it happen anyway, to get your perspective out, because we're all on the same mission, and that is to educate our kids in the best way possible. Yeah. Any lasting words, parting words?
Austin is amazing. I wish I was there, and I've had so much fun. So thanks so much.
Good deal. Thanks you again, man.
All right.
All right.